The Deception and Awakening. Primitive but fascinating. Those were the first words recorded in the Galactic Conclave's official assessment of humanity. Not as equals, not as partners, but as specimens worthy of observation. The massive conclave mothership hovered above New York City on that historic day, casting shadows across Manhattan's skyline. Humanity celebrated first contact with parades, songs, and endless speculation about what gifts of technology and knowledge our benefactors might share. President Lena Chen stood on the United Nations platform, her face broadcast to billions as she shook hands, or rather, pressed her palm against the sensory appendage of Grand Arbiter Vixnar of the Conclave. Today marks humanity's greatest achievement, Chen declared. We are no longer alone in the cosmos. What the cameras didn't capture was Vixnar's casual remark to his subordinate after the ceremony. Begin the extraction protocols. Their resources will serve the Conclave well. For 15 years, humanity played the grateful junior partner. The Conclave, a federation of 23 spacefaring species, offered us scraps of technology while establishing administrative centers across Earth and the newly established colonies on Mars and Europa. They cured diseases for a price, improved our propulsion systems with built-in limitations, welcomed human representatives to their Grand Council chambers without voting rights. Commander Eliza Reeves knew something wasn't right. As Earth's lead military liaison to the Conclave Defense Initiative, she had access to reports that never reached the public. The mining operations on the dark side of the moon that extracted twice what was reported. The educational centers that recruited Earth's brightest minds, who mysteriously stopped communicating with their families. The classified Conclave directives that labeled Earth as a Type 4 resource world. Not a partner, a resource. They're bleeding us dry, Eliza told Admiral James Okonkwo during a secured meeting beneath the Mariana military complex, and we're thanking them for it. Okonkwo, a veteran of the pre-contact African conflicts, rubbed his scared chin. Accusations need evidence, Commander. Especially accusations against our supposed saviors. I have the evidence. Eliza placed a quantum data crystal on the table. It contained transmissions intercepted by a network she had secretly established. Communications never meant for human ears. The Conclave weren't saviors. They were farmers, and humanity was the crop. The crystal revealed the Conclave's real purpose on Earth: systematic resource extraction, genetic harvesting, and a 100-year plan to gradually reduce human population to sustainable management levels. My God, whispered Okonkwo, his normally stoic demeanor cracking. How long have you known? Long enough to prepare this. She activated a hidden terminal, revealing Project Phoenix, a covert initiative developed by a shadow network of scientists, soldiers, and civilians who had glimpsed the truth. For 10 years, they had been adapting and improving upon the limited technology the Conclave had shared, creating weapons and defenses that the aliens didn't know humans could produce. We can't win in direct confrontation, Eliza said. But we don't have to. Not if we strike first. Strike smart. The catalyst came 3 months later. The Conclave announced the Terran Sustainability Accord, which would require human approval for all births, ostensibly for environmental balance. Protesters surrounded Conclave facilities worldwide. In Sao Paulo, when the crowds refused to disperse, Conclave peacekeepers opened fire, killing 27. The footage went viral despite Conclave attempts to suppress it. Within hours, uprisings erupted across every continent. The Conclave's response was immediate and brutal, orbital strikes on major cities to restore order. But humanity had been preparing. As the first energy beams descended toward Chicago, previously hidden defense arrays activated, intercepting the attack with technology the Conclave didn't believe humans could possess. Around the world, sleeper cells of Phoenix operatives moved against Conclave installations. On Mars colony, Dr. Nasira Khan, a geneticist who had been secretly studying Conclave biology, released a tailored pathogen into the administrative complex's air supply. It wasn't lethal. She had insisted on that. but it incapacitated the alien overseers long enough for the human workers to seize control. "This isn't about revenge," she told the frightened colonists. "It's about survival." On the Jovian mining platforms, engineer Marcus Takahashi activated dormant subroutines in the conclave systems, giving humans control of the massive extractors and defense platforms. The rebellion was coordinated, precise, and utterly unexpected. Eliza Reeves stood in the command center beneath Mount Rainier, watching feeds from around the solar system. "Activate the blackout," she ordered. Years earlier, her team had identified a critical vulnerability in conclave communications technology. With a single command, every conclave ship and facility within the solar system went dark, cut off from the central authority beyond Neptune. Grand Arbiter Vixnar, aboard the mothership in Earth's orbit, received the transmission from Eliza herself. "For 15 years, you've harvested our world while pretending to be our saviors," she said, her voice steady. "That ends today. The conclave forces in our system are isolated, surrounded, and outgunned. Yes, outgunned. We've been watching, learning, and building while you thought we were just grateful pets." Vixnar's translucent skin flushed with anger patterns. "You primitive fools. The full might of the conclave will descend upon your world for this treachery. Perhaps, but you won't be alive to see it. You have 6 hours to evacuate all conclave personnel from our system. Any who remain will be considered hostile combatants. You cannot hope to stand against the combined power of 23 advanced civilizations." Eliza leaned closer to the camera. "We're not just standing against you. We're changing the rules. Check your ship's quantum cores." Vixnar's aide whispered urgently in his ear. The Arbiter's color drained to pallid gray. "Impossible. How did you?" "We reversed engineered your quantum entanglement barriers 2 years ago. Your ship's power cord is now permanently linked to our control systems. We can shut it down with a thought. The same is true for every major conclave installation in our system." The human resistance had spent years inserting microscopic quantum triggers into conclave technology during routine maintenance. They couldn't match the aliens for firepower, so they had focused on control instead. "You have 6 hours," Eliza repeated, then cut the transmission. Admiral Okonkwo joined her at the viewport as alarms blared across conclave facilities. "Will they retaliate from outside the system?" he asked. "Eventually. But we've bought ourselves time." She pointed to a holographic display showing a hidden shipyard in the asteroid belt. "And we're not wasting it." The Phoenix fleet was small compared to the conclave armada, but it incorporated innovations the aliens hadn't anticipated. Adaptive shield harmonics derived from studying conclave weapons, stealth systems that bent light and energy around the hulls, and most importantly, drives that could match the aliens' FTL capabilities. On Luna Base, Dr. Victor Alvarez activated the quantum cannon, technology the Conclave had specifically banned humans from developing. The first test target, an abandoned Conclave mining platform on Europa. The beam lanced across space, and the platform didn't just explode. It disintegrated at the atomic level, leaving nothing but scattered particles. "Holy shit," breathed Victor's assistant. "It actually worked." Victor nodded grimly. "And they have no defense against it." As the 6-hour deadline approached, Conclave ships began hastily departing Earth orbit. Some attempted to destroy facilities rather than abandon them, only to find their weapons systems unresponsive. Another gift from Phoenix's infiltration teams. President Chen, who had been evacuated to the Himalayan defense bunker, addressed humanity as the last Conclave ship flickered into FTL. "Today, we reclaim our sovereignty," she said, her voice steady despite the bandage across her forehead, a wound from the attack on the presidential compound. "For years, we welcomed the Conclave as mentors and allies, only to discover they saw us merely as resources to be exploited. Their betrayal is complete, but so is our resolve." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "Make no mistake, this is not the end. The Conclave will return with greater numbers. but they will find a humanity they don't recognize, united, prepared, and unwilling to ever again surrender our destiny to those who would deceive us. In the Oort cloud, at the edge of the solar system, Eliza Reeves watched the deployment of the early warning network, quantum buoys that would alert Earth to any incoming conclave fleet. "How long do you think we have?" asked Captain Jijong, her second in command. "Their nearest major military installation is 14 light-years away. Even at their fastest FTL, that gives us at least 8 months." She turned to face the assembled officers of the Phoenix Initiative. 8 months to prepare for war. Across the solar system, humanity worked with single-minded purpose. The Conclave's abandoned technology was dissected, improved, weaponized. The shipyards in the asteroid belt operated around the clock, producing vessels that combined human ingenuity with adapted alien tech. On Mars, Dr. Khan developed biological countermeasures against each known conclave species. Not for genocide, she insisted. For defense. For leverage. In the universities and research centers of Earth, the brightest minds tackled problems that had seemed insurmountable before: quantum communication, gravity manipulation, energy weapons. Without conclave restrictions, human innovation flourished at an exponential rate. And deep within the Charon Research Station, orbiting Pluto, a team led by quantum physicist Dr. Emmanuel Kello made the breakthrough that would change everything. "It's not just about faster ships or stronger weapons," she explained to Eliza during a secure transmission. "We've cracked their interstellar communication network. We can listen to everything they say across 20 systems." Knowledge was power, and humanity now had access to the Conclave's most carefully guarded secrets, including the fact that not all member species were willing participants in the Empire. 7 months after the liberation of Sol, the early warning network detected a massive conclave fleet approaching from the Ta City direction. Thousands of warships, planet crackers, and troop carriers, the full might of an empire in rage. But humanity was no longer the naive species they had first encountered. And they were no longer alone in their resistance. As the Conclave Armada prepared to enter the solar system, they'd received a transmission, not from Earth, but from 7 different directions simultaneously. Representatives of subjugated species from across the Conclave territories, inspired by humanity's defiance, had launched their own rebellions. The message was simple: today, the harvesting ends. The Conclave's carefully constructed empire began to crumble from within, even as they faced a humanity transformed by necessity and betrayal. The revolution had begun, sparked by the species they had dismissed as primitive but fascinating. Eliza Reeves stood on the bridge of the Phoenix flagship Defiance, watching as the united fleet of Earth prepared to meet the Conclave head-on. "All ships, battle positions," she commanded. "They came to harvest a compliant world. Let's show them what they've really awakened." The reckoning. The Conclave Armada emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system, their massive ships distorting space itself as they decelerated. Leading the fleet was the inevitable Dominance, a dreadnought 15 kilometers long with enough firepower to reduce Earth's surface to molten slag. From his command throne, Supreme Warmaster Selthrax surveyed the tactical display. A veteran of a dozen subjugation campaigns, he had personally overseen the pacification of 3 problem worlds that had resisted Conclave authority. "Pitiful," he rumbled, his layered voice echoing through the command deck. "They've barely assembled a defensive line." He gestured at the scattered readings of human ships. "These primitives think they can challenge us with stolen technology they barely understand." His second, Strategos Yulvex, wasn't so confident. "The intelligence reports are concerning, Warmaster. They've advanced far more rapidly than anticipated. Advancement without wisdom is merely sophisticated suicide," Selthrax replied, repeating a Conclave maxim. "Commence the first wave. Standard subjugation protocol." 500 Conclave attack ships surged forward, their formation perfect after centuries of military tradition. They expected token resistance, perhaps even some surprising tactics from the humans. What they didn't expect was to be completely outmaneuvered. The human fleet, seemingly disorganized, suddenly shifted in impossible patterns. Ships blinked out of existence only to reappear behind the Conclave formation. Energy weapons unlike anything in Conclave records lashed out, not attempting to destroy the alien vessels, but targeting specific systems with surgical precision. In the command center orbiting Titan, Admiral Okonkwo watched the battle unfold through quantum-linked displays. Phoenix Squadron, execute Maneuver Hydra. Valkyrie Wing, begin Electronic Warfare Suite. The human counterattack wasn't about matching the Conclave's superior numbers or firepower. It was about exploiting weaknesses the aliens didn't know they had. Aboard the Defiance, Commander Eliza Reeves coordinated with the resistance forces from subjugated worlds. Activate the quantum disruptors. Now. Throughout the Conclave formation, seemingly dormant devices smuggled aboard during routine maintenance at space docks across the Empire. Activated simultaneously. The quantum communication network that coordinated the massive fleet fragmented, leaving individual ship captains suddenly isolated. On the bridge of the inevitable dominance, alarms blared as systems failed. Impossible, roared Xalthrax. How are they interfering with quantum-locked protocols? Unknown, Warmaster, replied a panicked technician. Our secure channels are being flooded with. The main screen activated without command, displaying the face of Dr. Imani Okello. Attention Conclave forces, she said, her voice calm and measured. Your quantum network has been compromised. We've been studying it for months. Every encryption algorithm, every security protocol. We've broken them all. Xalthrax's rage was visible in the toxic orange flush spreading across his armored skin. This is a bluff. No primitive species cold. Your private authorization code is Alpha Zentrix 913 Omega Prime, Dr. Okello interrupted. Your birth clutch consisted of 17 siblings, only 3 of whom survived to adulthood. A fact you've kept hidden from your subordinates because Conclave military doctrine considers small clutches a sign of genetic weakness. The Warmaster froze, mandibles clicking in shock. That's right, Okello continued. We know everything. About all of you. Your weaknesses, your fears, your secrets. The data you thought was secure has been ours to explore for months. But more importantly, we know about the Founders' Protocol. Throughout the Conclave fleet, commanders went rigid with fear. The Founders' Protocol was the Empire's most closely guarded secret, a backdoor built into every ship and weapon, designed to allow the original architects of the Conclave to maintain ultimate control. On cue, 20% of the Conclave fleet suddenly powered down, their systems locked by commands transmitted through the compromised network. This is your only warning, said Okello. Retreat immediately, or we will disable your entire fleet. Xalthrax slammed his armored fist on the command console. Override. Override all systems. But it was too late. The human attack had been precisely coordinated with rebellions across Conclave space. 7 subjugated species had risen simultaneously, targeting communication hubs, military installations, and political centers. Warmaster reported Strategos Ilvex. We're receiving distress signals from the home systems. The Drell Protectorate has fallen. The Vectory worlds are in full revolt. The quantum nexus at Rigel has been destroyed. For the first time in its 10,000-year history, the Conclave was fighting a war on multiple fronts against enemies who had spent years preparing in secret. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their adapted technology or even their surprising military tactics. It was the alliances they had quietly built with other oppressed species. While the Conclave saw humans as isolated primitives, Eliza Reeves and her team had reached out to resistance movements throughout Conclave space, sharing intelligence, technology, and most importantly, hope. The Defiance accelerated toward the inevitable dominance, leading a squadron of ships equipped with the quantum cannons developed on Luna. They weren't aiming to destroy the massive dreadnought. They had a more important mission. Boarding teams ready, reported Captain Zhang. The shield disruption is synchronized with their power fluctuations. Eliza nodded. Proceed. Special Forces teams, trained for years in secret facilities on Europa and Ganymede, teleported directly onto the Conclave flagship using technology reverse-engineered from the aliens' own transport systems. Their target, the Conclave's central military database. While the battle raged across the solar system, a quieter but more decisive operation unfolded within the inevitable dominance. Led by Major Diana Cruz, a former intelligence operative, the strike team fought their way through the labyrinthine corridors of the alien vessel. They never expected to be boarded, Diana observed as they encountered minimal internal defenses. Arrogance makes for poor security. In the database core, they uploaded a virus created by Dr. Alvarez, not to destroy information, but to transmit it. The complete military records of the Conclave, including the location of every fleet, every base, and every weakness, began flowing to resistance cells across the galaxy. Back on the command deck, Zelthrax faced the unraveling of everything he had believed unassailable. Half his fleet was disabled or under attack. Reports of uprisings flooded in from dozens of worlds. And now, human boarding parties had penetrated his flagship. Order a full retreat, he finally commanded, the words bitter as poison. All functional vessels to fall back to Rally Point Omega. Strategos Yulvex hesitated. War Master, that would mean abandoning 40% of our forces. They're already lost, Xalthrax snarled. If we don't retreat, we lose everything. As the able Conclave ships began disengaging, preparing to jump to FTL, human vessels made no move to pursue. This puzzled Xalthrax until the implications became clear. They wanted the survivors to carry the message of defeat back to the Conclave leadership. On Earth, crowds gathered in cities worldwide to watch the battle unfold on massive screens. When the Conclave retreat began, the celebrations erupted, not just for the victory, but for the vindication. Humanity had been right to resist. President Chen addressed the unified governments from the newly established Terran Defense Headquarters beneath the Pacific. Today marks not just a military victory, but the dawn of a new era for humanity and our allies, she declared. The Conclave sought to harvest us. Instead, they have sown the seeds of their own transformation. Throughout Conclave space, the carefully maintained hierarchy was collapsing. Inspired by humanity's successful resistance, subjugated worlds declared independence. Species that had been exploited for millennia turned against their overseers. 3 weeks after the Battle of Sol, as historians would later call it, the unthinkable happened. A Conclave diplomatic vessel approached Earth under a flag of truce. Aboard was not a military commander but Arkan Tolvesh, one of the 12 exalted who formed the Conclave's ruling council. In the neutral meeting ground of the lunar diplomatic facility, Tolvesh faced President Chen, Admiral Okonkwo, and Commander Reeves across a table fashioned from earth oak and Martian iron. The Conclave has stood for 10,000 years, Tolvesh began, his translator rendering his complex vocalizations into crisp English. We have incorporated hundreds of species, guided thousands of worlds, maintained peace across 27 sectors of space. You've maintained dominance, corrected Eliza. Not peace. The Archon's expression remained unreadable behind his environmental suit. Semantics. The fact remains that the structure we created has prevented major interstellar conflicts for millennia. At what cost? Asked President Chen. How many species have you harvested to extinction? How many cultures have you erased because they didn't fit your imperial vision? We did what was necessary for stability, Tolvesh insisted, but we recognize that adjustments to our approach may be required. Admiral Okonkwo laughed without humor. Adjustments. Your empire is burning, Archon. 7 major species in open rebellion. 32 Conclave military bases destroyed. Your quantum network compromised. These aren't conditions for adjustments. They're conditions for surrender. The Archon's posture stiffened. The Conclave does not surrender. However, we are prepared to offer humanity full membership status with voting rights and—" "No," Eliza interrupted. "Those terms might have been acceptable 15 years ago. Now they're insulting." She activated a holographic display showing the current state of conclave space, a once unified empire now fragmented by rebellion. "Here are our terms," she continued. "The conclave will transition from an empire to a true federation. All member species will have equal representation. Resource extraction will require explicit consent and fair compensation, and any world that wishes to leave the conclave will be allowed to do so without reprisal." "Impossible," Tolvesh exclaimed. The conclave has never faced extinction before," President Chen said quietly. "Make no mistake, Archon, that is what you're facing. Not just military defeat, but the end of your way of life. We don't want that. Despite everything you've done to us, humanity doesn't seek your destruction. We seek justice and a new beginning." The negotiation lasted 3 days. When it concluded, the Terran Conclave Accord established the framework for a transformed interstellar community. The conclave would continue to exist, but as a democratic federation rather than an exploitative empire. 1 year after the Battle of Sol, representatives from 42 species gathered in the newly constructed Harmony Spire orbiting Earth. Former enemies and new allies, they came together to ratify the Constitution of the Stellar Concordat, a new interstellar body built on principles of sovereignty, mutual aid, and respect. Dr. Nasira Khan, who had developed both weapons and cures during the conflict, addressed the historic gathering. "We could have destroyed each other," she said, looking across the chamber at faces human and alien alike. "The conclave could have exterminated humanity. Humanity and its allies could have dismantled the conclave completely. Instead, we chose a harder path: transformation through understanding." In the years that followed, humanity expanded through the stars not as conquerors or victims, but as architects of a new interstellar order. The technology that had been developed for war was repurposed for exploration, communication, and healing. The Phoenix Initiative, once a secret military program, became an open scientific collaboration between dozens of species. Its mission: to ensure that no single power could ever again threaten the freedom of all. Eliza Reeves, promoted to Admiral of the Concordat Defense Fleet, often reflected on how quickly everything had changed. In less than 2 decades, humanity had gone from an isolated species celebrating first contact to a linchpin of interstellar politics. "We never wanted war," she told the graduating class at the new Interspecies Defense Academy on Europa. "But when betrayal revealed the true nature of our benefactors, we refused to be victims. That is humanity's gift to the stars. Not our technology or our fighting skills, but our unyielding belief that freedom is worth fighting for, and that true peace can only exist between equals." On distant worlds that had known only conclave domination for thousands of years, children of a dozen species learned a new history of how humanity, dismissed as primitives, had sparked a revolution that transformed the galaxy, of how betrayal had led not to endless vengeance, but to a new beginning. And in the great chamber of the Stellar Concordat, where once mighty conclave rulers now sat as equals with their former subjects, the words of the first charter were inscribed in the languages of all member species. "Never again shall any world stand alone. Never again shall any species be harvested. The stars belong to all who reach for them with open hands rather than clenched fists." The conclave had crossed a line. Humanity's fury had been unleashed, but from that crucible of rage and betrayal had emerged something unexpected. Not just victory, but transformation. Not just resistance, but renaissance. And across the galaxy, a new era had begun.